I'll never forget the morning I stepped out onto my porch, coffee mug in hand, and saw my Finsame pride, my sweat, my boundary smashed to pieces, scattered across the dirt like kindling after a storm. The jagged splinters, the churned-up earth, the hoof prints trailing off toward the horizon told me everything. My herd was gone, set loose. At first, I thought it was an accident, maybe a fallen tree or a freak wind, but deep down I knew better. This was no act of God. This was sabotage, and I didn't need to look far to know who was behind it. Linda, the HOA tyrant who'd been gunning for me since the day she rolled into town with her clipboard and her fake smile. My name's Tom, and I run a ranch out here in Willow Creek, Montana, a sprawling 500 acres of open pasture, backed by mountains that cut the sky like a jagged blade. This land's been in my family for generations, long before the cul-de-sacs and manicured lawns started creeping in a mile down the road. That fence, the one Linda tore apart, wasn't just wood and wire, was my line in the sand, built with my own hands, post by post, under the summer's sun. It kept my 200 bison safe, sure, but it was more than that. It was my way of saying, this is mine, earned fair and square, and no one's going to take it. But Linda didn't see it that way. To her, my ranch was a stain on her perfect little vision of suburbia, a blotch of dirt and chaos that didn't fit her HOA's rulebook. She was in her 50s, hair dyed a shade too red, always sporting a visor like she was auditioning for a country club, and that damn clipboard, her weapon of choice, always tucked under her arm like a general's baton. She'd drive by my gate in her shiny SUV, slowing down just enough to scribble notes. Her lips pursed like she'd smelled something sour. Once, she even had the gall to tell me my barn was an eyesore and needed to align with community standards. Community standards, son, a cattle ranch. I laughed it off at first, figuring she'd tire herself out, but Linda wasn't the type to quit. She was the type to dig in, to push, to make your life hell until you bent to her will. It started small letters in my mailbox, crisp white paper with the HOA seal, warning me about non-compliant landscaping or excessive livestock noise. I crumpled them up, tossed them in the burn pile, and keep working. But then it got uglier. One day, I found a pile of gravel dumped across my access road, just enough to scrape my truck's undercarriage if I wasn't careful. The county said it wasn't their doing, it was HOA property, Linda's domain. Then came the legal threats, thick envelopes stuffed with jargon about unapproved structures and zoning violations, claiming my barn built decades before her subdivision even existed was somehow illegal. I could feel the pressure building, like a storm rolling in, but I held my ground, kept my cool. That is, until the night I heard my dogs barking, low and mean, the kind of growl that says trouble's close. I grabbed my flashlight, pulled on my boots, and ran out to the pasture. The beam caught the wreckage-emmy fence, gutted, posts sawed clean through, boards scattered like broken bones. Beyond it, my bison were gone, their hoofbeats fading into the dark. I ran my hand over the cuts, the splinters biting my skin, and I knew this wasn't vandalism, this was war. And there, caught in the mud, was a crumpled HOA flyer with Linda's name plastered across it like a signature. I stood there, heart pounding, anger burning, so hot it felt like my blood might boil over. That fence wasn't just property, it was my word, my shield, my stake in this land. Linda didn't just break it. She spit on everything I'd built. By morning, the whispers were already spreading at the feed store folks, saying my herd had run wild, that I couldn't control my own land. Linda's doing, no doubt, painting me as the reckless fool to her perfect community. I went to the next HOA meeting, boots still caked in mud, and there she was up at the podium, her voice dripping with smugness. "The ranch is a danger," she said, clicking through a slideshow on my broken fence, my bison on the loose, even a blurry shot of me hammering new posts under the sun. "Without oversight, This will only get worse. The room buzzed, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. I stood up, voice steady but sharp. You talk about danger, Linda, but you're the one who cut my fence. You let my herd loose to prove a point. The room went quiet, eyes darting to her. She laughed, sharp and fake, leaning into the podium. Oh, Tom, don't be ridiculous. Maybe if you followed the rules, you wouldn't have these problems. But I saw it in her eyes she wasn't just fighting me. She was enjoying it, thriving on the power, on making me look small. That night, as I sat on my porch, staring out at the herd, their massive shapes moving under the moonlight, something shifted inside me. Humiliation's a funny thing. It stings, it burns, but can also sharpen you, make you see things clear. Linda wanted to fight, thought she could break me with her notices and her slideshows. But she forgot one thing. Out here on this land, I wasn't just a rancher, I was a force, same as the 200 bison grazing in my pasture. They weren't just animals. They were power, raw and untamed, the kind of power Linda's clipboards couldn't touch. And right then, an idea sparked out a plan. Not yet, just a flicker of something wild. What if I gave her a taste of chaos she couldn't control? What if I let the herd loose not on the highway, not by accident, but right through her precious HOA office? Over the next few days, that flicker grew into a fire. I drove by their office-y squat, beige building with a sign that read Willow Creek HOA, building our future. The irony made me chuckle every time. It sat on a flat lot, hedges trimmed to perfection, a wide-open field behind it sloping right toward my ranch. Perfect. I watched the herd closer, learned their rhythms, how they bunched up near the gate at dusk, how they'd surge if you gave them a push. I oiled the gate hinges, spread extra feed to keep them close, and waited for the right moment. Thursday night, 7 p.m., when Linda and her board would be packed into that office, patting themselves on the back. I played my part, kept my head down, let Linda think she'd won. She even sent another notice something about animal disturbances. I smiled when I read it, tucked it away. She had no idea what was coming. Thursday came, the sky streaked with orange and purple. I sat on my porch, coffee tasting more like adrenaline, watching the herd shift restlessly by the gate. I could hear cars pulling into the HOA lot, Linda's voice carrying on the breeze, sharp and smug as ever. I walked down to the fence, hand on the latch, and whispered to the bison, "All right, boys, let's show 'em what we're made of." One tug, and the gate swung wide. For a moment, nothing, then the ground shook, a low rumble building to a roar as 200 bison charged, dust exploding around them, horns glinting in the moonlight. I jogged behind, up the ridge, watching them pour down the slope like a river breaking a dam. The parking lot cracked under their hooves, car alarms screaming, headlights flashing. Inside the office, I saw it through the windows. Linda mid-sentence, mouth frozen, board members clutching papers as the first bison crashed through the hedges. Screams erupted, chairs toppled, papers flew. Linda dropped her clipboard, her precious rhinestone headband slipping as she scrambled for the exit, only to freeze as two massive bulls blocked her path. She stumbled, heels snapping, and landed in a potted plant, clawing at the floor while chaos reigned around her. I stood at the edge of the lot, arms crossed, watching her empire crumble. The flower beds were flattened, the community pride banner snapped in two, windows shattered as a bison's horn punched through the glass. Linda screamed, "Call the police! Call animal control!" but her voice drowned in the thunder of hooves. One bull parked himself at the entrance, snorting, his bulk like a wall, while board members cowered behind desks. Linda pointed at me through the window, shrieking, "This is your fault." I raised a hand, gave her a mock salute, and smiled. For the first time, I saw it, fear in her eyes, the crack in her armor. 10 minutes later, the herd started to scatter, trotting back to the ranch like they'd done their job. The office was a wreck, windows gone, doors crooked, the lot torn to shreds. Linda stood in the middle, hair wild, clutching her broken clipboard, staring at the ruin of her kingdom. The next morning, the town was alive with its neighbors whispering, reporters circling the wreckage, cameras zooming in on trampled flower beds. Linda tried to spin it, standing in front of the news vans, voice shaking. "This was an attack by a reckless rancher," she cried, but the reporters weren't buying it. "Isn't it true the HOA has no authority over his land?" one asked. "What about the cut fence?" another pressed. Linda stammered, her mask slipping. At the feed store, folks started talking to Old Man Carter, saying he'd seen the saw marks on my fence, others spotting Linda's SUV near my property at odd hours. The sheriff came by, hat in hand. "Linda's pushing for charges, but you're clear," he said. "Fence was tampered with. Herd had a right to roam." I nodded, but I didn't need his words. I needed Linda to feel the weight of her own choices. And feel as she did. The HOA started to crack, board members quit, residents revolted, waving her Bison damage fees in her face at meetings. "Why should we pay for your fight?" they shouted. Linda doubled down, sending more letters, but her power was gone. Then came the final blow. I'd always known my family's deed stretched back to the 1800s, but I'd never checked the fine print on one small parcel acre under the HOA office. Turns out, it was mine, always had been. I walked into that office, papers in hand, and laid them on the desk while Linda snapped, "What are you doing here?" I looked her dead in the eye. "This land's mine, Linda. Always has been. You've got 30 days to get out." Her face went pale, hands shaking as she read the deed, stamped by the county clerk. "You forged this," she sputtered. "Nope," I said. "You built your empire on my land. Time's up." The next month was chaos for her trucks hauling out furniture, board members slinking away, residents cheering as the office emptied. Linda fought, threatened lawsuits, but no one stood with her. On the last day, she stood in the doorway, visor crooked, clutching her clipboard. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I leaned in, voice calm. "You tore down my fence, Linda. Everything after that, that's on you." She stormed off, heels clicking on cracked pavement, and I felt at peace, finally, like the land itself was breathing again. My fence stood tall, the herd grazed quiet, and that empty office? I left it standing, a reminder of what happens when you push too far. Looking back, this wasn't just about a fence or Bison or some HOA rulebook. It was about holding your ground when someone tries to take what's yours. Linda thought power was in her clipboard, her meetings, her control. But real strength? It's in the dirt under your boots, the patience in your bones, the fire you unleash when you've had enough. I don't regret a thing, not the chaos, not the stampede, because sometimes you gotta let the wild speak for you. So, tell me, how do you think? Was I right to fight back, or did I go too far? Drop a comment, share your own story of standing up to someone like Linda, and let's talk about what justice really looks like out here. Oh, and hit that subscribe button, trust me. You don't want to miss what's coming next.